This interview with Jonathan Durr is actually going to be a little bit longer than our past videos. We have so many wonderful moments in the interview with Jonathan and nuggets of information that he shares with us that we just couldn't bring it down to a short period. So I hope you enjoy it. Listen closely. I think you're going to learn a lot. We are joined today by our music director here at St. Anne Steveston, Jonathan Durr. Welcome. Tell me a little bit about yourself, where you were born, how you came to be here.
Sure. I was born in Taiwan, but my parents are from Hong Kong. So before I was born, my parents moved to Taiwan and worked there for 10 years. And then I was born along with my third brother. So the two of us stayed there. And then I lived there for 7.5 years before we moved back to Hong Kong. So I grew up with Mandarin and then moving back to Hong Kong, going into Cantonese.
Wow.
And then we lived there for 8 years and until we moved to Canada. And by then we moved to Toronto first, and I was 15 years old. So at a very early age, I was exposed to church music, as my father is the minister of a church, and my mom is the organist of the church. And so I joined children's choir first at the very beginning and loved singing. And my mom remembers that I had a very good sense of pitch and a very, very natural boy soprano. So I sang there for a long, long time, and I often got the solos. I started violin lesson when I was 9 years old. And at that time, the family was not in a wealthy position financially, so instrumental lessons were very, very expensive. And I was so blessed that one of my uncle, who's a medical doctor in Regina, knew that I liked music and would fund my lessons. And that's how I first started violin at a very late age. For violin, it's quite late, which is 9 years old. For me, when I come to Toronto, I was first in contact with the pipe organ. That's where at St. Matthew's Church in Toronto. The church is over 120 years old, and there was a two-manual Castlevant organ, which is not a huge organ, but I was so fascinated at 15 years old to hear that organ. And that's when the inspiration comes, because when you hear a pipe organ, it's a real instrument that actually buzzing and resonating with the building. And so at 15 years old, I was still barely plugging the piano like this. I started learning the hymns, singing in the choir, and start learning bit by bit, left hand first, right hand, and start putting things together. So by 16 and a half, I asked the organist at my father's church, can I study with you? And the organist at the church was so kind that gave me free lesson. Every week, in fact, he invited the youth of that church, anyone who plays the piano, come and join in. So we started off about 7 of us that started the organ lesson. And because I live right next door to the church, where my father is at the rectory, so I would go there every day after school and start practicing. And very soon, we were just playing one hymn, and I asked the teacher, organist, I said, can I take over the whole service? Can I play the whole service? And for sure, he let me do that, and I started doing quite a few times of that.
Well, maybe I'll give you a chance to shout out some of your mentors. So if you were to pick out two or three individuals that really truly were mentors to you in the early stages of your music development.
Yes. Well, the late Douglas Saunders was my first teacher. Unfortunately, he passed away quite early at a very young age, 68 years old or so. So he was my first mentor in the organ. Later on, when I get into university, I've majored in violin performance. However, I've always, out of my curriculum, outside of what my violin curriculum, I've always joined the chapel choir or church music study. So when I was in Wilfrid Laurier, I happened to study with the late Barry Cabina, who was a very well-known Anglican composer. He was an incredible organist. So I stayed with him for three more years and tried to finish my bachelor degree. And at that time, I was also concertmaster of the Wilfrid Laurier University Orchestra. I was exposed to music, the mass music of Mendelssohn Elijah, which is a massive piece, or full orchestra and chorus. You're talking about close to 250 people on stage.
Just tell us your music training. So you referred to your master's in violin.
Yes.
And that was done, where did you do that?
I actually went through 4 different universities. And when I was going through schooling, by the time I entered university, I thought I couldn't do anything. I couldn't do anything right. I have no future. I can't do a thing. But I knew I wanted to study music. So I picked my first school that I've chosen, which was University of Western Ontario. And I studied violin performance at that time. And after the first year, I thought God had given me an opening because I thought I could never get into university. And once I got into university, I found my true love. And I thought I was in the best place in the world. I made myself every day practice 4 hours, no less than that. And I always get up at 7 o'clock and I would bike from a very, very long distance. I would bike close to about 8 kilometers every day to get to the campus. And then every day I practiced and I worked so hard. However, after first year, I felt like I didn't improve much. So I decided to switch school into Wilfrid Laurier University. And that's when I first started the choir, the chapel choir. And while I was a violin major, you'd be supposed to be doing orchestral work. And you would have orchestra Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. However, Tuesday, Thursday is supposed to be my free time. I took up that time. I said, I want to join the chapel choir because I want to learn the mass setting. I want to learn the motets. I want to learn the palestrina. I want to learn the early music. And I knew the conductor was very good. And at that time, I studied voice as well. But I studied with a master student who was an opera singer. But how much can you do in one shot? You have violin practice, you need 4 hours of that. You have voice practice, you have piano practice and choir and all that. So things...
You didn't sleep.
I didn't sleep, that's right. I took in a lot. Mm-hmm. When I finished at Wilfrid Laurier, I felt like I needed more. I needed more. So I applied to university in the States. None of the school accepted me. So I applied to McGill University and I got in. They said, you have to do your bachelor degree again. I said, oh, really?
Oh.
And at that time, I felt I hit a wall really, really hard.
That would have been shattering for you, I bet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After 4 years, and my dad was saying, what have you been doing? You know, all this training, you've been wasting my money, I mean, burning my money and all that stuff. So anyhow, I got into McGill, and somebody told me that you should look up Professor Fuchs, Maurizio Fuchs. I found his number, I called his number, I said, Mr. Fuchs, I would like to study with you. And Mr. Fuchs later called me back, Jonathan, I don't know if I have room for you. I didn't hear your audition. So he hanged up. That was a weekend. Next day, after it was a Sunday, he called me back, said, Jonathan, come at 9 o'clock in the morning. I need to hear you first. So I play for him. I still remember what I play. I'm just going to give you a snippet of this. I started off with this. It was a D minor partita by Bach, and number 2, I play for him. And Mr. Fuchs said to me, Jonathan, you have no idea how to play the violin. Oh. I hit the second wall, like this. And of course, by then I was already 24 years old. I thought about it. I said, Mr. Fuchs, I'm here to learn. Can you teach me how to play the violin?
Wow, good for you. And?
And Mr. Fuchs says, good. I'm going to teach you how to hold the bow and how to play open strings. He taught me how to reset myself with the most remedial work. He took me down to grade 1, to ground 0. For 6 months. Don't play anything else, play your open strings. All my friends, all the students, they're all playing big concertos. They're all playing huge pieces while I'm still working on my remedial work and play.
What was driving you to hang in there?
Oh, I was crazy. I would nearly collapse. I would go in to bring my little tape player and record all this lesson and write everything down, exactly what he says, and he showed me exactly what to do with the instrument. And that's when, of course, at that time, I had no idea where I am because all I know is I'm at the bottom of the list. And I know at McGill University, there were 44 violinists, and they place you by the way you play. And I was number 42. So, and I was 4 years ahead of all the other people already. So I didn't want to give up. I said, I think I can do more. And at that time, I found a church, which is called St. John the Evangelist. It's near Place des Arts, near the performance hall. And I would walk there to go to church. And I loved that church because the church so happened, the organist at that time was Patrick Witt. Patrick Witt was a very well-known organist in BC because he was the music director of the cathedral here. And of course, the music was beautiful because they would have mass setting for every service, a new setting of pieces by Orlando Gibbon. They have William Walton. You can have new mass from Herbert Howell. All these beautiful English composers, and every week we have a different mass setting. And being in that church really allowed me to come so close to God. Because every time I walk to that church, the Red Roof Church, I feel like it's a pilgrimage that God is asking me and sending me to that church. After my very first year, and I studied with Mr. Fuchs and his assistant. Into second year, the assistant has to leave. Then in the very first day of the class, Mr. Fuchs says, I'm going to have 2 assistants. The first one is Chin Chin. Chin Chin is the top player of that class, of Mr. Fuchs' studio. And then Mr. Fuchs said, the second assistant is going to be Jonathan Durr. Who's that? Who's that? I said, Mr. Fuchs, you must have gotten it wrong. It couldn't be me. I'm still learning open strings and all this stuff. And later on, he told me, he says, Jonathan, I've been teaching for over 30 years. I've never seen any student learn this quick with the foundation that you're building up. He said, how old are you? I said, I'm 25. Oh, you're a late bloomer. He said, yes, it's a little too late to become a soloist, but I'll make you a good teacher. At that time, I was in shock, but I said, okay, this is an opportunity. I'm happy to take on that. Now I'm learning pieces. I'm learning the proper way to play the instruments. And there goes the second year. So things started to glide, looks like. And then the third year at McGill, Mr. Fuchs was asked to teach at Indiana University, which is the first one of the universities that I applied and did not get in. Joseph Gingo had passed away, and Indiana University had asked Mr. Fuchs to replace Mr. Gingo's seats. And I said, wow, Mr. Fuchs, that's congratulations. I mean, this is great. You deserve a place over there. Mr. Fuchs says, well, don't congratulate me. I need an assistant. You're coming with me. Anyhow, I got there. He threw me 8 students right away, including some of the master degree students. And I was still trying to finish my bachelor degree. After 1 year, I finished my online study with McGill, did my recital and my jury, and finally got my bachelor degree. I started off my second year in Indiana University, but that was my first year of a master degree. And when I got into master degree, I wanted to major in violin performance and choral conducting. So I was continued to be Mr. Fuchs' assistant, and one of the most challenging pieces that I had to conduct for my choral conducting was the Brahms Requiem.
Oh, my goodness.
And that was one of my exam pieces. And that was very, very challenging piece. And I had a full choir. Didn't have the orchestra, it was 2 pianists.
That's incredible. I honestly, this is such a treat to be able to hear your backstory. It is like out of a movie. It really is. Why are you a music director at an Anglican church? And we'll get to the other things you're doing as well, because I know that's not all you're doing.
Right.
But maybe speak a little bit about that.
It was very interesting because before I come to St. Anne's, I was a music director at St. Albans, and back in 2004, and I stayed there, and it was very interesting. It was God's calling. We came here with no financial support, with no job, with anything. And I still remember we arrived in August. By September, I managed to get 6 students, but still does not balance the bill. At that time, I attended St. Albans Church because we live very close to it. We can even so close that we can walk to it. St. Albans organist happened to be resigning or retiring rather. It was John White, and so that position came up. And the warden of the church at that time asked me, do you know any organists? I said, I have to call a few friends to find out, but you're looking at an organist. And she said, oh, really? And so we did an interview, and that's how I started first. And by the time I got that position, we were able to balance the bill, 0 to 0. And we were able to survive and slowly work our way through. And then we start coming to St. Anne's in 2010. But in 3 years' time, the organist decided to go to New York and study further. And so Brian approached me to say, hey, Jonathan, because from time to time I would sup in. Would you consider? So I said to myself, I probably won't take this job. So we set up a meeting time, and I walk into the office, and Brian was so welcome. Saying, "Jonathan, it's so good to see you. Let's have a seat," and all that. So have you give some thoughts about it? And out of nowhere, I was going to say no. I said, "Oh, you know what is it?" And he said, "Oh yes, I've decided to come."
Jonathan.
And I had no idea why. I said, "Did I just say that?" I couldn't believe, because all I was thinking, I said, "Oh, I'm too busy and I have 2 kids already and we're not quite ready." But out of my mouth, I said, "Yeah, I'm ready to take this job." And so that's how I came, and which I'm very glad.
Oh, I tell you, so are we. God and your faith played very pivotal roles in some of the decisions that you make. I mean, I'm sure probably in all decisions that you make, but there were key moments. And maybe
Yes.
talk about your faith and what that means to you.
Going back to McGill's time, it was the lowest point of my life. I was already 24, 25 years old. I had no job. I didn't finish my bachelor degrees yet. And I was at the lowest point, and I didn't know. I couldn't see what's in front of me. I was completely tunnel vision. And I remember during the first Easter or Good Friday, at the church there were prayer vigil, which you would pray through the night, and you sign up for 1 hour at a time, and then there would be at the chapel, which is filled with lily and candles, lots of candles, and you would sign up specific hours. So I signed myself up at 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. and I would pray. And then I would do fasting for 24 hours as well. And that had a huge effect on me, because I felt God's presence. And God was telling me, "Jonathan, don't worry. I'm here. If you're willing to follow, I will watch your steps in front of you." And sure enough, that's the time that Mr. Folk told me, "I'd like you to be my assistant. And the following year, I'd like you to come to Indiana University. And I want to give you the teaching job." Yes, I definitely had a favorite hymn. In fact, most people would know it. These beautiful hymns, and because of the church, I find that these music really inspire to bring people closer to God.
And when you put together the weekly services, what's that process like?
I particularly like that process, because I would work with the rector. In preparation for that, I would go through the readings for the hymns and for whatnot, and find out what the theme of this service is, and then look up the suggestions, and then find the things that I knew, and then put it in together. So I find choosing the hymns become very devotional. I hope that the music would continue to grow and expand, and in a way that the music can inspire. The congregation here enjoys very much the traditional songs. Anything by the Charles Wesley ones that are very, very welcome. The early ons, there was a lot of Bach music that was also a very, very important figure as well. And the contemporary one, Marty Hoggins, wrote a lot of beautiful music. And I'd like to bring in more contemporary songs as well. Contemporary in terms of their language, and contemporary in terms of the style of music. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. So I do violin teaching from Monday to Friday. 1, 2. And on Saturdays, I've been conducting this Richmond Delta Youth Orchestra. I'm the associate conductor there, as well as chamber music director. Breathe together. Look up. And then during the year, I would be invited to do a music festival as an adjudicator. I do about 5 or 6 music adjudication, and sometimes out of town. I've been to Victoria or in Terrace, BC, in Toronto as well. And then locally, I have the North Shore Music Festival from time to time, the BC Conservatory Music Festival.
What do you like to do as a hobby or your spare time?
Absolutely. I have a passion for cars. I love cars. I think at one point I had 5 cars, but I also like to maintain the cars, work on the cars. When I was young, my dad thought I was going to be a mechanical engineer because in the house, if you see anything, I always take it apart. I also like to do renovations, so I did my home renovations, putting doors in, my backyard fence, toilet, sink, whatnot. So I like to do things with my hands.
What are your dreams? What are your hopes? What are your aspirations?
At one point in my life, I wanted to conduct something like a Vancouver Symphony or Toronto Symphony. I was at one point symphony director for Sunshine Coast Symphony for 3 years until COVID hit. I have 2 music camps that I run during the summertime. Yeah. One of them is the chamber music camp, which we're going into the 6th year. And then second one is the violin intensive practice camp, where students would come and practice 6 hours, and I would coach them for 2 weeks.
What makes a good teacher?
Number 1, patience. Number 2, understand the students. Understand the individuals, and there are people who learn things differently. There are students who learn by rote. There are students who learn, by demonstration. There are students by theory. One of the things I like to do is to inspire them to understand what's behind music and what's the importance of music. If you want to build a tall building, you have to have good foundation. And once you have that good foundation, you can go very, very high. You can put a lot of things on top without stressing it out.
Great life lesson.
I often ask God as a servant, tell me what I should do. Tell me how I should serve. Tell me what I can do.
This has been an absolute delight, Jonathan. The chance to talk to you about the things that inspire you, and your journey has been fascinating. I know we are very grateful that we have you here for however much longer. I don't know. I hope it's long, but that you are truly a gift to St. Anne's and to the music community at large. So thank you for sharing your story with us.